Welcome back to Shoot Me Straight with Eddie and Dave. It's just you and I today, buddy.
It is. Welcome back.
Yep.
Man, I've missed you.
It's been a busy, I don't even know. I'm losing track of time, but it seems busy like month and a half.
You're a popular man. You're in demand all over this country. People are flying you in.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's all been training, so it's been good.
Yeah.
Just been busy.
Mostly SWAT teams and law enforcement.
Mix of both. Yeah, it's been
private guys.
Yeah, law enforcement and then some private trainings and working with my buddies over at GBRS. Like they put on courses, so I'll go fill in as an instructor for them.
You enjoy it?
I
Doing
do.
it as like a private venture?
Yeah, I do. I like teaching. I like teaching. I like watching people like excel or just take the information that you're giving them and are able to process it and actually implement it. And then at the end of the day, when I can see like they've started from a certain point and now you've progressed them to a point where they can actually see the results of some of the things that you're instructing, then yeah, that's satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some aha moments where they have just a moment of going, oh my gosh, like I'm starting to get this.
Yeah.
Or you show them how they're either shooting over or like looking at their bullet patterns and helping them fix.
Yeah, I mean with shooting, it's pretty like if you have a beginner or somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience, I think you have to have a little bit more patience, but it's a lot easier to get them to the next level, right? Because all you're doing is just fixing the fundamentals and there's multiple fundamentals that you have to apply when shooting your pistol or rifle, and it's just getting them to understand each of those fundamentals and how to apply them properly at the same time as you're shooting, right? But you also have to realize as an instructor that if they're beginner or they're not, they're novice, they're drinking through a fire hose. So you can't expect them to be like, okay, now we're just going to move on to this next thing and start having them do, some more high-speed training. It's like you have to sit there, and it takes a lot of work. It's like sit there and make sure you get them to that next level and they properly understand those fundamentals. So, I mean, the light bulb comes on more so when teaching beginners, and then when you're teaching more advanced people, that's just those people understand the fundamentals already, but you can show them ways to excel in their shooting tactically. I don't teach like competition shooting. It's just a lot of tactics and I guess if you want to call it combative shooting, but there's also ways to excel. You can be a very good shooter, but then, okay, now let's understand if a gunfight does actually break out, what are you going to do next, right? And that's where, mindset will come in and all that stuff. But, yeah, I mean, I like either one. I like doing both.
You see guys that it's almost similar in my head to people that have never trained in any martial art or any sort of like striking or jiu-jitsu or anything. They're like, oh man, when I see red, bro,
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like guys being like, oh, I got a gun, so if anyone breaks in my house or like something pops off, but if it actually happened,
you're not
going to fumbling around.
Yeah, dude. And I think that's a huge, that's what I think bothers, like I'm all for, Second Amendment, everybody should own a gun if they want to, right? This is America and you have the right to defend yourself. But at that same time, like if you go out and buy a gun and then don't put the training in, that thing is just a paperweight at that point, right? Because I think people think when a situation does happen where they do have to pull their gun, and that's all, well, take a step back. If you owning a gun is probably one of the biggest responsibilities that you have, especially if you are going to conceal carry and have that gun around you or on you at all times. That is a huge responsibility, and the only time you should be taking that gun out is to end someone's life, right? I'm a true believer in like you're not carrying it to like threaten or intimidate, or if I do, I'll just shoot you in the leg, right? It's like, that's ridiculous. Then you could have got out of that situation. If you were able to intimidate with a gun, then you can do that without using the gun or showing that, because all you're doing is escalating the situation. If you were going to pull that gun, you're pulling it to take someone's life. At that same idea, though, that should be the last thing that you do. It should be like the last resort. Saying that, when it does come down to the last resort, you're in a oh shit moment, right? Your fight or flight's going to kick in. You know, your body's going to, you know, go. It's
Yeah.
the adrenaline's going to get going, right? So if you have not trained with that pistol or whatever gun that you're carrying, and you're expecting like the first time that I'm ever going to use this is in a self-defense oh shit situation, you are not going to act the way you think you are.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like you're talking about, where people that don't take combatives, you know, the guys are like, well, if I see, you know, if something happens, I'm going to see red and I'm going to take care of the situation. And you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see, right? Especially if you're going against somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
Then
100%.
Yeah. So
And when you train against, when in combat sports, you train against anyone that's had experience training, I mean, it quickly humbles you, and you go, man,
Yeah.
I know nothing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I need to put in the work, put in the hours.
Yeah, check your ego,
Yeah.
come in, learn. And that's, you know, and I think even if you don't carry your pistol everywhere and you have it at home, you should still train, right?
For sure.
It's like, you have it, get to know how to use it, all right? And I'm not saying you don't have to become, you know, some big gun nut or
John
huge
Wick.
gun, like enthusiast, but you should have enough confidence, like, I know how to apply the fundamentals with this thing, I know how to, you know, hit when I'm shooting at, and
You talk a lot about like the lizard brain. I love that. It's not an analogy. I love that description.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like your body it's ingrained in your body of like pulling out, you know, how you train correct fundamentals,
yeah.
you know, and so otherwise you'd be pulling like this, you'd be, you know.
There's all sorts of little nuances that go into it, right?
But
to
if you
actually
train
do
it
it
a
properly.
bunch,
Yep.
like your body's just going to respond that way.
Yeah, and that, I mean, and that's what I try to explain to clients when they come, especially like for the beginner shooters, it's a little easier, right? Because they don't know, and they're just like, hey, I'm an open book, like, show me, right? But then if you get some guys who are like, oh, I've shot, you know, a bunch of times before, and you're like, okay, and then you watch them, you know, pull their pistol or shoot their rifle, and you're seeing like, dude, you have all sorts of things that you can work on here. You might have shot a bunch, but you've been shooting a bunch the wrong way. Like,
Is that kind of harder because you're trying?
well, then
to
you're trying to
retrain
burn, right? But what were we getting at?
Yeah, your body responds. That
Yeah, so
lizard
then
brain.
I try to explain to those people, I'm like, you know, in any special operations, doesn't matter, SEAL teams, Green Berets, Marines, we do, well, and I can just speak to the SEAL teams, but I'm sure every other group is like this too, is every time we go back to shoot at the range or work on every other skill set that we need to have, we go back to the basics every single time and do the basics monotonously, like to where it's like, you know, even SEALs will be like, oh my gosh, like, but you do that, so that's the last thing you have to think about,
Yeah.
right? So, and this is how I explain to people, like if I'm teaching close quarters combat, right? We'll break down, hey dude, here's actions at the threshold, which is the doorway, and here's how you should properly, you know, take a door, and in each scenario, you know, dictates a different way, but we show them the basics of how to properly do it, and we'll work on that for just a straight day, or just making 2 to 4 man room entries, right? And it becomes monotonous, and you're like, oh, and you know, you're sort of going through the motions a little bit, but you're ingraining all that into you, because that takes bandwidth.
Yeah.
If I have to think about what I'm doing at the doorway, or if I have to think about, you know, how to properly scan or sweep, or even if we're on the range, if I have to like think about, oh, I have to draw my pistol this way, and each time you're taking up bandwidth, right? So each person only has a select amount of bandwidth.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you have to think through those steps in a real world scenario, then you're not going to have enough bandwidth to actually apply to what's actually going on in front of you.
Yeah.
And be able to process what's going on.
Yeah.
And so that's why you have to train that way monotonously. So I don't have to think about pulling my pistol. Like, it's an automatic response. And it's an automatic response where I'm applying all the fundamentals correctly.
Yeah.
That takes time.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't realize. I think some people show up and they're like, I want to be John Wick.
Yeah.
And you're like, sweet, dude. Okay, well then, here's how you get to John Wick status, I guess, is by applying the fundamentals and basics over and over and over. Yeah. And it's not sexy, but that's how you get to where you can do, I guess, the more advanced stuff.
Do you think most people haven't even shot their gun enough that they wouldn't be scared of their own gun's reaction to pull the trigger? You know, they're not used to shooting it enough.
Yeah.
That they're so, they'd be freaked out about it popping off when they pull the trigger, that like they haven't even.
Well, you saw it when you came you came to the Pipe Hitter Foundation event, right? And we had a good turnout, and there was a mixed bag of experience, right? There was some dudes who had shot, and there was people who, own guns, but you could tell right away. And as an instructor, you can tell, like, if someone shows up and they're like, I'm good. Yeah. You watch them with that pistol, and you're like, you're scared of that thing. Yeah. Like, your anticipation, you're shaking, you're nervous. And so if I have somebody like that, I already know in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is going to take some patience. This is going to take a little bit to even get them. My job is to get them just being comfortable with that gun, having it in their hands.
Proper safety.
And but also, basics, not being nervous, okay? And that takes time. That just takes reps. But once you can get them to, okay, they're getting comfortable with the gun, now let's start applying, like, all the fundamentals.
What I like about when you've run, so I've done it 2 or 3 times with you now, of just being out at the range. I haven't done any of the advanced stuff, and don't really want to until I have basics down. But like what I like of how you run a range is you're not, some uptight. Like, you can almost sense the teacher's disposition, and it bleeds to the rest. So I've been to ones where you have one that's so uptight, he's so nervous, he's like, over everyone's shoulder all the time, like freaking out. Everyone's background. You figure out their background. You talk to them. You're at ease. You're going, hey, this is how we do stuff. You show them. You make sure there's safety there 100%.
Yeah.
Never once was it not safe, right? In fact, we had a kid that was their first time to shoot.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And you put someone over him the whole time so that
he would be comfortable, and also, like, his dad was there, so I was like, hey, let's make sure, that, because I want that kid to be comfortable shooting, right? And so if he's already nervous and you leave him unattended, or like you're not giving him some attention, then he's not gonna get any less nervous each time. You have to have a professional there to sort of coach him through. I mean, that's what I do with each one of my kids. The first time I took them shooting, which was when they were young, they were all nervous. I mean, because it's a gun, and it can kill somebody. But once you show them how to properly handle it, how to handle it safely, then you can start applying. Okay, now let's start shooting. And the more and more they get comfortable with it, and my kids aren't nervous at all around guns anymore. But they aren't nervous, but they also know how to treat them and respect those guns.
I feel like you do that really well. You had it. There was a deal where everyone was relaxed, enjoying it, but they weren't. It wasn't free. It wasn't at all free for all. It was structured.
It's a structured, controlled range, but at the same time, and I think I explained it. I've explained it to when you've came and done courses, and I do it to every course. I'm like, hey, here are the 4 basic range rules, which are universal. Right? They get put out at every range. Now, if you follow each of those range rules, then there should not be a mishap, right? At the same time, if I catch you breaking some of those, like you're leaving your finger on the trigger when you're pulling back, or you know, maybe doing something it's not like a gross thing. Like if you're pointing the gun at somebody with finger on the trigger, then yes, hey, you're out, right? Like we can't have that. But if you're just sort of breaking the rules a little bit, because you're nervous and it's the first time, dude, I'm not going to sit there and like, hey, what did I tell you? It's like, dude, you have to, and I expect them. I'm like, I expect you to make mistakes. You're human. And I'm also not going to run this range like some drill sergeant that's like, abide by my rules or else. And that's why I don't like about indoor ranges, right? They sit there and like, they don't let you do anything. And they're so safety focused, which they're overly safety focused to where it's no longer a learning environment. Now everybody's just nervous about breaking the range rules instead of applying that bandwidth is now, I don't want to break these rules, and I have this like Nazi drill instructor RSO watching my every movement, just looking for something to say. Now my bandwidth is on that, and it's not on applying the fundamentals, right? And that's what I'd rather have you focus it on. I want it to be a learning environment, but I also, it's going to be a safe one, and and that's why I only have a certain amount of people on the line at a time. I abide by all the rules that I learned coming up in the teams, and they work, but I teach it in a very relaxed manner so people can actually learn, and they want to be there, right? The second you start yelling at people or just being stern and being like, don't do that again, then they're like, oh, they're focused on that.
In a weird way, it may even make it more unsafe, right?
Yeah,
like
at
you're
times.
making them more nervous.
At
you're
times
adding
it
on
can.
more pressure. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it was super helpful. And the first time that I went, and I have very little shooting experience. I have some, right? Like I've hunted some. I've just shot out at ranches before and been to a few ranges. Had my CHL in Texas. But again, I agree with you. Like even when I had my CHL in Texas, mostly just carried when we went to like the carnival and stuff like that. Stuff
to places where you're like something might pop off here.
It could happen.
Yeah.
I hate theaters too. I'm like, ugh.
Well, ever since those theater shootings, right? You're like
Denver a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
and just like it's like
a shitty place to be in if something does happen because it's dark, it's massive. There's not a lot of exits. There's just the front and back. So
I know. I always think about that.
Yeah, I do too. When I go in, I'm like, it crosses my mind. I'm not like.
Brand's like,
I'm going to enjoy
in the middle in the big. I'm like, let's sit over in the corner.
Yeah, near the exit. Yeah.
But even then, I agree with you. I probably, if something did happen, even today, like I need to shoot more. If something did happen, my best bet would be like, hey, Eddie, here. Because you're just it's so ingrained in you. I need to have that ingrained in my body.
Yeah, and that takes time. And that's what I tell people too. I'm like, you give them, especially if they're beginners, you give them drills that they can do in their house, like dry fire drills, or like, hey, here's some things that you can work on without having to go to the range.
That's true.
And then it's up on that individual to apply those and then come back. And what I tell people is like, if you put the time and effort in, and it's not like it's taking hours out of your day. It's like, dude, just dry fire for 10 minutes. Yeah. You could do that in your bedroom, like dry fire in the mirror.
5 times a week.
Yeah, and it will pay dividends. Like next time you go to the range, you will be that much more progressed.
Yeah.
But, you have people that will do it, and then you have people that are like, I'll just wait till the next time I go training.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, where does that fall on your priority list,
I think some people want like a false sense of security, maybe, that I don't really want to know the skills. I just want to
have it.
I just have a gun, and
I think those are some like the most dangerous gun owners right there. It's like, dude, if you're not training with that thing and learning how to use it properly, like we just talked about before, it's not going to happen when the time arises, right?
But Eddie had the coolest gun with all the coolest attachments and all the
Yeah. Oh, I see a lot of that too. I mean, people show up.
and they've never even shot it.
Yeah. But like this last group I just taught, we did 2 days of close quarters combat, and that's all we focused on. And those guys have the best of the best gear, you know, because they're all very successful.
Yeah.
But they take it seriously.
Yeah.
Like they're enthusiasts, but they'll apply everything that we're putting out. Like they soak it in, and then, you know, yeah, they have the gear, but they are utilizing it.
Is that one? Is that another one? Obviously, law enforcement, SWAT teams, all these. Audience may not know, but you're traveling like crazy.
Yeah,
now,
dude, it's been insane.
all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to get Eddie to charge $50,000 a day, but he won't do it. But I think these that's probably like your favorite group. I know you truly are. You truly love equipping people that will help them like save their lives, you know, save lives, and like you love that. That's your why, I think. And then, but there's the second group of people that, you know, successful business guys, but take it seriously and really, you know, a lot of those guys, what you described, the last group you were with, you said how much you loved training them because they were like, you know, can we progress to the next level? And you'd be like, not quite yet or something.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, yes, sir.
Yep.
Like, and to really trust you to train
Yeah.
them.
And that it makes it that much more, I guess, enjoyable and satisfactory because you're like, okay, these dudes, they're not just doing this to, you know, post it on Instagram or like, you know, just to say I did it, right? Mm-hmm. They actually want to learn how to do it properly, and they take it serious. And yes, and I also like the fact that they want to progress. They're like, when can we do this? And it's like, well, we have to keep working at some of these fundamentals first before we can progress onto there. And I'm like, that's the way it is. It's like we're not.
They trust your judgment.
Yeah, it's dangerous to keep moving that. You know, and we tried to use that analogy when Kyle was just in here. It'd be like, you know, a white belt dude showing up for the first time in jiu-jitsu, paying him $10 million or whatever professor is like, hey, here's $10 million. I want my black belt at the end of 2 hours today.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
And he was like, no.
And then, you know.
But thanks for the $10 million.
And I get like, yeah, like he's like, well, that's a lot of money. I would just give him a black belt, but it doesn't mean anything. But at the same time, you gave him that black belt. Yeah. So he's going to go to the next gym and be like, well, I got this under this professor. Yeah. And that person's going to be like, dude, this guy's trash. How does he even have a black belt? That's how I think about it with the clients that I work with. Like, if I'm teaching them something, I'm teaching them a product that it's from me and, you know, whoever I'm instructing with. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it has to be done like close to perfect. Like, you cannot move on unless you are showing you understand these skills already, and then we can progress. But if you just let them like, yeah, go ahead, man, do live fire night runs, I'm signing my name on that and being like, I let that happen. Mm-hmm. And that's not, I'm never going to let that happen. Yeah. You know, it has to be done in a safe manner.
Is that rare that you come across those guys, though, that are just like, no, we want to do live fire, like, and all that?
I think.
And most people like, hey, are we ready for that? Like, trust
I think people think they're ready for it. Yeah. Like I've had one group, actually it was one of my first groups. They were like, hey, we want to do live fire. And I'm like, that's not going to happen at all. I could already tell with this group, like, they were completely, like, beginners. Yeah. And I was like, just to let you know, I'm going to manage your expectations. Like, we're not going to go live the whole time. We might just do dry runs for 2 days straight. Yeah. like, you know, and I have like Simunition or UTM that they can utilize, but it's like, dude, if you aren't showing me that you understand, but what I'll do for them is I'll get them in the room and I'll shoot live fire, like, you know, just put a target and they'll sit in the room and just boom, boom, and it's super loud And that's when they realize, oh shit, like this is loud, it's chaotic. We're in an enclosed space together shooting rounds. And I think that sort of shows them a little bit like, okay, now do you understand why we cannot go live?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, think of this. So when me and Mason did just the entering of a door and sweeping a room, no live fire, right? Which good. We didn't want to. And so, like, if you're not used, if you put your, like, he goes first, and as he's going, and I'm coming up, pulling my gun up right as he passes me, and I have my finger on the trigger, you know,
there's a lot of dangerous stuff that can happen, and that's why it's a slow progression. Like you said, it's like a spazzy white belt, and you're just letting them run amok. And you're like, dude, somebody's gonna get hurt.
Yeah, and to be honest, as a man that really wants to grow, you want to put in the time and effort. You'll have more of the reward. Like, it'll be legit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it makes me feel good to see people progress in the right way.
Yeah.
And as an instructor, you're like, that's what I loved about when I was in the teams, right? Especially when you start taking leadership roles, it doesn't matter if you're like a fire team leader, so now you're in charge of 3 dudes. And then when you move up to a squad leader, now you're in charge of like 8 dudes, right? And then you progress to LPO. But each time you move up in that leadership position, like even at fire team, like those 3 dudes, those are my dudes. Like, I want them to be the best they can be in this platoon. So you take ownership of that, and you're like, all right, fellas, like, we are going, as a fire team, we are going to be the best fire team. And then when you move up to squad leader, now you have double that, but now that's my responsibility. And this is my squad. I want it to be the best squad. And then eventually when you move up to platoon chief, LPO or platoon chief, that's when you're like, dude, this is my platoon. I'm going to make sure we are the best platoon of the team. And you only do that.
That's what you were at the end.
Yeah.
Was that the last, like, year, 2 years?
Yeah, I was like at 18 years, I think, at that point.
Okay, so you had 2 years as a chief? Is that right?
Yeah.
2-ish?
Make me
that's all right.
think back. It's like, I was like 3 years. I was a chief for 3 years. Well, the last year I was in prison, but still a chief. But that's the mindset I take that mindset just now into instructing. Like, if I have a group of individuals that are really like enthusiastic and want to know how to do it properly, this is my little group.
Yeah.
And I want them, if they're coming to me for instruction, I want them to be the best group possible. Yeah. Because they might go somewhere else. And if they go somewhere else and they're completely dicked up and they're like, no, whatever. Yeah. Guess what that instructor, hey, where were you guys before this? Yeah. And then like, oh, Eddie Gallagher, but just let us do whatever we wanted. That's my name, dude.
It's your reputation.
And I sign my name on that, right? So I'd rather have them done. If they go somewhere else, then I would rather have that instructor be like, dude, you guys move freaking awesome. Like, on what you're doing. Where were you guys instructing at? And then your name's on that. Yeah. So that's the way I think about it.
Just like a true Navy SEAL. You guys want to win.
Yeah.
And, you guys
win at all costs.
Yeah.
But that takes work.
I love it. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love that. I wish more guys coming out of the military and trying to find their why and purpose in their next ventures and next part of their life. I feel like you're an inspiration to a lot of them. Of one, getting healthy. That's
the first priority,
dude, and getting your family back in alignment, your relationships back in, like, I mean, you spend years and years and years just in an unhealthy pattern with family and relationships and all that.
Yeah.
So it's like first you got an alignment with God, I feel like.
Yep.
And then with Andrea and kids and putting them priority, and then getting yourself healthy at the same time, and doing different treatments, but also creating good patterns and rhythms.
Yeah. The big thing is just setting like a like a schedule, right? Or following a set pattern each day that is a healthy pattern, right? So like get up, talk to God, read my Bible, ice bath, work out. That's my priority. Like I don't care about anything else at that point. I'm like, that's my selfish me time, right?
Yeah,
But
selfish and selfless, because you won't be anything to anyone else.
no, I won't be, I won't be as good, right? But I'll say this too, like, yeah, life does get in the way, and I don't make excuses for that. Like, if it's like, oh, well, now I gotta flight at whatever, right? It's like, well, then I'll just get up 2 hours earlier and still try and knock that out. Now, obviously, that changes sometimes. Sometimes you just can't, but then I prioritize when I get to where I'm going, when I get to the hotel, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z workout in the hotel because I need to do that. That's just part of my regimen. And it also just makes me a better human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not as mean.
Yes. That's when I know, like, I'm like, if I start having negative thoughts or I'm like, ugh, then I'm like, I haven't done what I needed to do today.
The receptionist is the enemy. Then when you're looking for an enemy. Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, dude, did I tell you I got arrested in New York?
Was it something with the guns?
Yeah. Did you hear?
Dude, I did not hear the whole story.
I went to Times Square, and dude, I'm losing. Like, it was like three weekends or 2 weekends ago, with Andrea and Ryan, because I went up there. I did a podcast with Julian Dory. First time I met him, really awesome dude, awesome podcast. I think it's going to come out in a week or so. But we stayed in Times Square for 2 days just to like be in Times Square, and New York is fun for like a couple days. I think, but it's about as much as you can take it. But I was flying from there to go to a course in Virginia with GBRS, and I had just brought my pistol with everything I needed to teach the course, but I had it locked, in the box.
You've traveled with pistols plenty of times.
That's all. Like the airport here already knows. I come in and I'm like, yep, all right, and they do, look at it and they're like, good to go. But so I traveled from here to New York to LaGuardia, stayed at the hotel for 2 days, and then we're leaving. And so that's where me and Andrea and Ryan were splitting ways, right? I was going to Virginia, they're coming back here. This is actually pretty funny too, because we said our goodbyes, and she's like, all right, stay out of trouble, and I'm like, you know me, within 10 minutes, I'm calling her. I'm like, I'm getting arrested. And so what happened is I go up to check in for the flight and going through the normal procedures. And I'm like, hey, I'm declaring this. It was the box that was locked with my pistol and everything. And the flight attendant or the flight person was like, what is that? And I was like, what's a pistol? And she's like, I'll be right back, and I'm not thinking, it's like 5:30 in the morning too, so I'm still like sort of just foggy brained a little bit. And 6 cops come, and they're like, you need to come with us now. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you got to come with us. So
they handcuff you or just?
No, they were like, grab that box and walk with us back. So I grab it and I'm walking, and they like were sort of circled around me. And so I stopped and I was like, what's going on right now? And they're like, we're placing you under arrest. And I was like, what? For what? And they're like, you cannot have a pistol in the city, like, unless you are law enforcement. And so I was like, dude, I didn't know this, right? I didn't even take this pistol out of the box the whole time I was here. But I was like, I didn't even know you couldn't fly. And so what they explained to me, they're like, oh yeah, we arrest people weekly for this. And so I'm like, all right. So they take me in the back office, and I sort of just, I was like, listen, I did not know that I could not fly like into this airport.
Well, you landed with it.
Yeah, and that was my big thing. I'm like, dude, if this is such a communist place, I was like, don't you think the airlines have a responsibility to be like, oh, you're flying into LaGuardia with this pistol, just to let you know. But no one said a thing. And then not only that, I got my pistol from the airlines in LaGuardia and went to the hotel with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, so this doesn't...
When you're trying to fly it out, they arrest you.
And I think that they ended up like... And I also told them, I was like, dude, I'm a retired... I had to, unfortunately, drop the SEAL thing. I was like, I'm a retired SEAL. I was like, I teach shooting to law enforcement. I also run a foundation that completely helps you guys. I was like, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but I was like, dude, come on, guys. And they were actually ended up being cool, and they were like, all right, dude, we're just gonna let you
Did
go.
any of them know you?
No, I don't think so. And then, you know, they were like, hey, just don't come back here with it, you know. But even I was like, dude, this is insane. You can't even like fly through here with a pistol, right? Like even if it was a layover, you could be under arrest.
Yeah.
And
Evidently, you can fly into New York with pistols. You just can't leave with them,
yeah,
which is crazy.
yeah, and they'll arrest you. It's yeah, that was pretty eye-opening. I was like, dude, this is nuts. And then just seeing Times Square alone for the 2 days, I was like, no wonder this place is the way it is. I'm like, there's no like rule of law there. Like, you know what was crazy is Andrew and I were walking down this, you know, Times Square, and there's cops everywhere on every block. I counted 54 in a row that were just staring down at their iPhones the whole time and just sitting there on the corner, not paying attention to shit. And it's people running amok there. Yeah.
Well, because they'll get in trouble if
Yeah.
they try and
I
do
mean,
their
I don't
job.
think, yeah, they know that. They're like, let the criminals do what they want.
Yeah.
You know, it's, yeah, it was eye-opening.
Yeah.
But also pretty funny at the same time.
That's wild. You're always getting arrested.
I know, dude. It's my Andrea.
You
When I text her that, she's
traveling
like,
private.
"Yep."
When you get you a PJ.
And so, trouble will find me, I guess,
Yeah.
in some form or fashion.
Do you what did Andrew say before we move on?
She was just like, "Of course."
I don't know if listeners know, but your wife, you have the coolest wife. Like your wife is so, I mean, what's great about Andrea is very feminine, right? But she is tough-skinned and.
She's tough, feminine.
Yeah, like
But-
she can,
Yeah,
you know.
she'll give it back.
Yeah.
Or like she's a savage, dude. That's
Yeah.
what I love about her. She's.
In some ways, I think she's tougher than you. I'm not gonna
I'm
lie.
not. I'm not gonna lie. She is. She's got her attributes that. She's got attributes that I lack, you know,
Yeah.
and that's I think, but that's like
That's a good thing.
in any marriage. I think you have to understand, like, yeah, the wife has strengths that the husband doesn't have, and then the husband has strengths the wife doesn't have, and that's when you can utilize both and actually understand like where each person falls in the marriage and how you can utilize both those strengths and help each other out. That's when you can have like a awesome marriage, because you're teammates at that point, right?
Yeah.
If you want to be teammates, then you need to understand how to utilize each other's strengths, and also not get like if you see the spouse like lacking or like, oh, I'm not doing as well in this, not coming down on them, being like, oh, why aren't you? It's like, okay, well, let's help you out through this or whatever.
I think that's a big part. That's why I really do believe as husbands we're leaders, and as a leader, that doesn't mean you possess all the strengths at all. In fact, you may possess even less, but as a leader, you have to see that. You have to let go of your ego. You have to
Big time.
utilize. I think this is what's, and I'm not like, oh my God, Trump is the best thing in the world. He's Jesus Christ. Like, I don't believe that. Like, but I do believe, I really do hope he becomes president. But I think what he's done this time, or at least as it appears this time, is be in that true leadership position. He's now he's got a team, like having Elon and being over efficiency and government efficiency and just that entrepreneurial mindset.
RFK.
Having RFK around food
health,
and health. Having Vivek and having
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yep.
I mean, he's got
JD Vance.
the Avengers
He's building
crew,
that
right?
team. Now he doesn't have, like, those are all those guys possess all sorts of skills that Trump doesn't.
Yeah.
You know,
which is why he surrounds
as a leader,
himself.
You put them in the right positions.
I think because did you listen to his Rogan?
I listened to the first 30 minutes.
Okay, so I think it was in the first 30, maybe not, but where he, Rogan asked him what it was like getting elected the first time and going to the White House, and he said it was like more surreal than, but then getting shot, right? He was like, when I got shot or when that happened, he was like, I knew where I was. I'm blah, blah, blah. He's like, when I first stepped into the White House, it's like, what the heck? And then he also admitted, he's like, yeah, dude, I didn't know what I was like doing in the sense of surrounding himself with the right people, right? I think he left certain people in place, and those people worked against him the whole time.
Yeah.
But there was a big learning
And
curve
he
there.
listened to.
But
he
he's a
listened to
smart
certain-
businessman, and he's fixing that this time. He's like,
Exactly.
now I know, like I've had the 4 years in there, and I can, and honestly, that is what a good leader does. Is he's like, yes, I made these mistakes. I'm fixing them this time, and I'm going to make sure I'm surrounding myself with the good people, right? Instead of having that, which the left, oh, he's arrogant. It's like, dude, no, he's not. He's a New Yorker,
Yeah.
but he also is a very smart businessman and a smart leader, because then he'll just surround himself with people where, like we just talked about with husband and wife, that fill your
gaps.
Yeah, gaps where you're not as strong as, other people.
That's your really one of your, I think of it from a business perspective, that's one of your primary goals. If I hire someone, I want to hire someone that's better at whatever position it is than I could be.
Yeah.
If I'm hiring a marketing guy, he's going to be a lot better at marketing than I ever will be. And 90-something% of the time, I'm going to default to whatever he thinks in marketing, he or she. But then there's also times, as a leader, since you're at the very top and you're looking at the whole thing, there's few times that you have to say, you know what, I hear you, but we're going to go this way. Like there has to be that one person.
There has to be a direction. And
it's rare in a marriage, I think. But there have been certain times that I've said, no, we're going to go this way. And it's been the right decision. I've really taken in the input. I've listened. But God's placed us in that position. And I think biologically, God, we prioritize logic over emotion. And as a leader, sometimes you have to say, hey, no, that's a bad move.
And that can go both ways. So, like, even as a leader, so if you're a leader of your household, which the man is, if you're married, you have kids, you are the leader of the household. You set the tone, right? Yeah. And I was explaining this to somebody the other day where I think, and none of us are perfect, and the advice I was giving this individual was through learned experience from screwing it up over and over, right? So I was telling him, I'm like, because he was saying his wife will start nagging him about something or, just whatever. And then he loses his temper or will start going back, right, at her, and which is a natural response. I think a lot of dudes can, relate to that. And I know I did it back in the day where it's like if your spouse is getting on your head about something and you're just not in the mood or you're tired and whatever, and then you'll just come right back and snap back and be like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, as a man, I'm like, this is where it's the hard part of being a man and a husband. I'm like, you set the tone. So I was like, if you match, it doesn't matter if it's your wife or maybe your kids, if you match their emotion, the whole house is going to crumble, right? I think, if the spouse, if your wife is in a mood or whatever, and you just sort of let that go, the kids aren't, the kids are like, all right, mom's in, whatever in the mood. But if you match that and then both of you are there, then the whole tone of the house is wrong, right? Now everybody's on edge or everybody's like, oh, it's just not. But if you, as a man, can sit there and de-escalate the situation and actually okay, I'm not going to get upset. And sometimes that takes, hey, I'm going to step out and go for a walk for 20 minutes or find a way to diffuse the situation properly. That's what being a good leader is. But I will also say a good leader knows when to lead and he also knows when to follow. There's times when my wife she's a lot smarter than me, I'll say that, and when it comes to certain decisions, and I'm like, okay, you take the lead on that and let's do it, right? And
I think that's a lot of the times, right? Because you see their strengths, they're operating in their strength, right? Most of the time, I'll be like, you can make the decision, but most of the time it's going to be based on their strength. And if they're saying, you know what, we should invest in this and stuff like that. I've done the research.
Oh, especially
blah, blah,
with
blah.
that. I'm like, yep, I trust you. Let's
Yeah.
do it, right? Because
Yeah.
my brain just doesn't work in that manner,
Yeah.
like, and hers does, and I'm glad it does. But it's
Yeah.
like I will definitely let her take the lead and be
Yeah.
like, yep, let's do that. But then,
Sometimes
yeah,
Andrea has to step in and be like, don't punch him, Eddie.
yes, and then
Don't.
she has to, yeah, don't get in trouble, don't do this, you know.
Don't do it, Eddie.
Yeah.
You're like, but I want to.
But then sometimes I'm like, no, I'm going to because this is happening.
And then 24 hours later, you were right. I'm sorry.
Bail me out. No, I mean it's,
awesome.
but I think that's even in any business is
Yeah.
to be a good leader. You need to know when to lead and when to follow.
Yeah.
That's in the military. That's what makes, honestly, the SEAL teams so different from just other branches that I've got to work with. Is yes, you have a leader, but at the end of the day, everyone that is in your platoon should be able to pick up and lead,
Yeah.
right? Even for, I mean, new guys, it's definitely not, you don't want them leading, but you give them the opportunity to lead as you're bringing them up. Like, hey, now you're in charge of this. Now you're going to lead this. And then sometimes those new guys will have ideas like, hey, why aren't we doing it this way? And just because he's a new guy, you don't shut that idea down. You're not like, shut up. You're like, all right, let's think about this. How do you apply what you're saying? And then if they have a good idea, let's do it.
It seems like what's a little bit different with team guys, like they have a voice.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's professionals. There's been through so much training and so much stuff and you got to think, like, if you're on a very high profile mission that's super dangerous and someone gets killed and you got, or just chaos, and you have to have guys that are prepared enough to step into any role.
Yeah.
If they need to be.
Because during, and that's what people don't realize, like during war, in a chaotic situation, you're going to get put in a position where you better step up and make a decision because and it doesn't matter what rank you are or where you fall in the pecking order, you should, again, understand the fundamentals and basics of what you're doing and freaking make a decision.
Yeah.
All right. And also in the teams, we preach, like, not every decision you make is going to be the A+ answer, but at least make a decision.
Yeah.
Like a perfectly executed wrong decision is better than no decision at all.
That's a good word.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. Dave, since I've been gone, you've been back here. You've been canoodling with Russell Brand, dude.
Yeah. He's become a good friend.
Yeah. How is
Him and
that?
his family. Dude, he's a trip. He came down here a couple weeks ago, and I was at a recovery type meeting. I think I can say
recovery
that.
type?
And afterward, came up and was talking with me, and then I'm like, well, the church that he'd gone to, their studio is under construction, and so he's like, I got to record my stuff somewhere. I'm like, well, I feel like Kevin Costner. I was like, I just built a field. Like, I'm like, I have a studio, and why don't you come check it out? And pretty much last couple of weeks I spent almost every day with him. Quite a bit. Amazing wife, amazing kids.
Yeah.
His kids' names are Mabel, Peggy, and Herbie. Little boy's Herbie.
Herbie?
Yeah.
Herbie the love bug?
Dude, they're so cute. And his wife's incredible. Her and Fran hit it off. And when you see guys in the media, they're like, okay, now they love Jesus. You're like, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I try and not think of, because you don't know. Until you meet someone and get to know them, you don't really know them from
Adam, you're like,
for what they put on YouTube
Yeah.
or social media, and getting to know them, it's genuine. Like, that dude has had a genuine, and spent a lot of time with him helping other people. I could tell you of, I don't know, a lot of people that he completely went out of his way to help them. I mean, within an hour of different, he'd take a video and be like, okay, my wife's a big fan. Whatever. And he's like, okay, let's take a video and talk to her and make her day. We went and helped.
Because he's funny.
He's hilarious.
He's a freaking riot.
Dude. He's a lunatic.
I watched it. I watch all of his movies. Did you watch any of his movies?
A little bit. I didn't know that much. I didn't know how big of a deal he was.
Dude, he was like
international.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and then Get Him to the Greek. I mean, then he was like the Bunny's voice in Hop. He's been in a lot of stuff, but like the movies that he's in he's freaking hilarious.
Well, he had his own TV show too, and then he had a Russell Brand TV show. He's been on every late night show, like all sorts of stuff. But dude, he's really what's really cool is seeing how God has
transformed him.
Really has, man. It's not I know he does a lot of political stuff. He's really philosophical. He talks so fast, but like you're processing what he's saying from a minute earlier, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, that makes sense. But it's like he's already gone on, and when you see someone, I'm always hesitant because there's a lot of cultural Christians, right? That they'll learn the Christian language, and especially down here in the South, but they may not. Yeah, bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Translates. But with him, he doesn't have that cultural Christian language. Yeah. So he'll make jokes about committing suicide, and then
well, he's being
talk
himself.
About the grace of God and how crazy it is that God saved him, and
that's good. Well, then he's being authentic.
It's like you and me. I mean, there's probably nothing more that I respect than just being who you are and authentically. And so we were going to do a podcast. He's the one who's like, hey, let's do a podcast on yours, but I'm going to wait till he comes back and we both do it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I know he wants to go shooting too. I heard Jim was like telling me, and I was like, yeah, man. I mean, my schedule was so freaking hectic. I was like back for, I think, a total of 3 days and 3 weeks. Yeah. So I was like, bro, I have these 3 days. I'll take them. But it just didn't work out. So we'll do it when he gets back here. Yeah,
it'd be one that you probably just like me, you, him, and have like be on no finger on the trigger, Russell. Crazy.
Oh, mate. No, that'd be cool, man. I mean, he's a funny dude. I think, Forgetting Sarah Marshall is one of the funniest movies that I've seen with him. It's because he was in it. Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy how God breaks people, and if anyone is in a period that it just seems absolutely like world is ending, devastation, and it's internal really too. It's not necessarily external. Like on your story, you were getting prosecuted, possibly go away for life, like that stuff on the external, but God was doing something internal, right?
Yeah.
Like you've gone through all sorts of suffering. Like you don't really feel alive unless you're suffering for the most part.
Yeah.
And so like it wasn't like externally you were hurting so bad that you reached out to God. It's this internal thing that God starts to work, because that's where he breaks everyone. And for him, it was he got a bunch of people coming after him for money, to be honest. Like if you got money and status, like lawyers tend to seek that out, You don't see him prosecuting a lot of broke people. It's like they're coming after him for a bunch of money stuff, but then he had his son, and with his son had to have an open heart surgery.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, as a tiny baby. I mean, his heart's like the size of an acorn, and he, and it all happened in that one time frame, and then he just poured out to God, and I mean that's someone that's been all over the world doing Buddhists and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, because I know he was like into all sorts of things for a hot minute.
Meditation.
Which is whatever, man. That's like people are looking for something.
Yeah. What's funny is one of the first things we talked about, I'm like, well, I was like, man, let's do some breath work stuff. And he's like, you want me to FaceTime Wim Hof and we can do breath work? I was like, sure. We did. But
Is that your first time doing Wim Hof?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
It was cool.
Did you get
really
like,
cool. We've done it a couple
did you get
times.
like high?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, that stuff is legit.
He did this. So we did this one exercise is like a little bit longer. And it's like 30-minute, big breaths, all that stuff. And then he did the second one he did, though, was 4 breaths. And on that 4th breath, it's the way that you do it.
Hold it.
Yeah, and you it's how you're positioned up and stuff. Like, you almost pass out. And it's pretty cool. And you feel, I guess your blood's more oxygenated.
Yeah.
After that, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was into that for, it was like 5 years. Before I got out, I went to like this group thing. This dude so I was doing this brain treatment stuff, and then the guy that was giving it to me was like, hey, I do this breathing exercise, and he was like this hippie-ish dude.
Yeah.
He's like, if you want to come check it out. So Andrew and I went, and dude, it was weird because it was at this random house, and there was probably like 20 to 30 people there, and everyone like brought blankets, and everyone laid out, and then he played like the Wim Hof thing, and we went through it all, and dude, yeah, like I felt you're like floating by the end of it, and I was like, this is pretty sick. So then I got into it. I was like, okay, I like doing this because it also like calmed everything down.
Yeah.
But then Wim Hof has an app.
Yeah.
And then of course, like any team guy, I'm like going to the extreme with it. I'm like in the parking lot, like just doing the breathing. I'm like, I can knock out a Wim Hof in 10 minutes, Then you're like almost passing out in your car. Yeah. But then I did it here for a little bit. I fell off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's legit.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really good way to, just adding it into a routine.
Yeah.
That especially you probably do it when you're in the cold plunge, huh?
Well, I think it automatically, when I do the cold plunge in the morning, I focus on my breathing, and it's really just taking in like deep breaths and letting out, and really I'm doing that to not focus on the cold, right? So you're like, because it doesn't matter how many times you do it, you get in that thing, you're like, oh shit.
Yours circulates too, doesn't
Yeah,
it? So then you don't get the 20-second.
No.
Because in the tub one, after 20 seconds, you're like, supposedly, you're like, I can, all right, my body's kind of adjusting to this.
I mean, your body will adjust even when it's circulating. It still remains cold, but I think when you're breathing, you're focusing on your breathing, you all of a sudden you're like, okay, I've been in here for 2 minutes. And it's when I find myself sometimes when I can't get my breathing down, or I have like all this other stuff going on in my mind where I'm like, I get in there and I'm like, I still got to do this and this. That 3 minutes or 5 minutes that I'm in there takes forever. I'm like, dude, what, 20 seconds? Like, damn it. So I'll sit there and focus on my breathing, and then it just, 3 minutes or whatever. If I do 5 minutes, it goes by a lot quicker.
Do you have it? So when you first started doing it, did you feel like a euphoria for hours after?
Yeah.
You feel still?
So I'll get out and immediately, because I have that garage gym, I'll go work out. Like,
nice.
Or that,
so you don't
or I'll
like
stretch.
Go to a hot shower or whatever?
No, heck no. Because you're supposed to let your body naturally warm back up on its own.
I think that's a key.
But what I'm gonna get I think I'm gonna get a sauna infrared for Christmas gift to myself, and then I'll do what I heard is like the hot and cold before at night is supposed to be the best.
I did that last night.
Yeah, and then you're supposed to sleep like a baby.
Yeah.
So I'll probably just mess around once I get that and see what works for me and whatever. But yeah, I'm the cold plunge I swear by. It's not like some magical, like everything's gonna be healed, but it just, for my mindset, and
it's really
it does decrease inflammation. So I'm like, cool, let's do that. But I just like the feeling of, first off, it wakes you up. So like even if you don't feel like working out, if because there's days where you're like, oh dude, I'm sluggish, or maybe you didn't get good sleep. Get in that thing for 3 minutes. You're like, dude, let's go. Like I'm ready to go. So
sucks.
It does. But
Does
you
it
know
get
what,
easier?
dude? You're not gonna get any satisfaction if something is easy.
Doesn't suck.
You gotta suffer a little bit to enjoy like, the after effects. It doesn't, yeah, I think it does get easier. It gets easier as far as the decision to do it every time, right? Because then you form that into your regiment, your habit. And so you're like, hey, I have to do this, even though I know.
Can you do it longer and longer? Like,
What I've heard is there's really no health benefits to staying in there. And I'm not an expert on this, obviously, but I've listened to different theories, and they're like, dude, you're not gaining any more health benefits for staying in there for like 10 minutes.
yeah.
It's like 5 is the max. I'm like, cool, I'm good with that. And I also heard that it actually will work against you if you stay in there too long. Obviously, you're going to put your body into hypothermia at some point, so you got to be smart about that. I mean, so if you're a Neanderthal that's like, I'm going to stay in here for 30 minutes, it's like, okay, buddy, well, you're going to...
Maybe hurting yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's cold water, so...
Get Andrew Huberman in here to...
That'd be cool to have him.
Dial it in.
Yeah, he's freaking full of good knowledge.
No.
Did you, I already asked you this, you voted yet?
I'm going to vote. I may vote today. I think I can go early vote
get
today.
on it.
Yeah.
Get it done.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like...
Harris Waltz, let's go.
Hey, whatever floats your boat, man, White men for
Just
Kamala. Yeah, I voted yesterday. It took 3 minutes, in and out. But
Are you fearful? Are you fearful? What are your fears or thoughts coming up November 5th?
Well, my one fear is I'll be in D.C. November 6th for Gio's funeral. So I'm like, no matter what side wins, I'm like, there's going to be probably chaos going on in that snake pit. But
Gio would have his funeral
of course,
in DC
I'm like,
on November 6th.
This makes sense. I don't know. I'm optimistic. I think Trump's going to win. But my big fear is obviously, I don't care. Like, I know if Trump wins, I know the left is going to do their, whatever they, freaking little riots and throw spats and fits and whatever. Great, go ahead. Just burn your cities down again. But either way, like, I don't think that's a big worry. But if Kamala wins, then I have like fears and concerns of like what the other extreme will do, right? And I don't even think, like, I'm not talking about January 6th because I don't think that was anything that they've blown it up to be. But I do think at this point, I'm like, there are people that are fed up, and you just never know, man, like how people are going to react. And so that's, I'm not like super fearful, but it is a concern, right? That people will lose their mind and be like, dude, I've had it. But I think from the way it looks now, it's like, I think Trump's going to win. But that's also like why I'm concerned, because if Kamala wins, not only she wasn't voted in during the primaries, it was a coup, so they just put her in there. And then I think with the momentum that Trump has right now, and Kamala is, the more she talks, it's like, oh, come on. But if the momentum Trump has right now, and if it's like the polls, and I don't trust the polls, but the polls are like, oh, he's ahead. And then all of a sudden, just like last election at 3 a.m, oh, we got this huge spike in votes. It's like, okay, this is like, we're no longer the United States of America. Like, I don't care what you say. Like, you guys, there's something corrupt going on here. So I think that's a major concern as well.
What do you think about, like, some states don't require voter ID, right?
I know that they're fighting for it, yeah, to not, and that's just because they've let in how many millions of immigrants, and then they're shipping them off to where? All the swing states. Those are so they, of course they don't want voter ID. And they're like, but that's just a way of cheating. It's like, that is the only reason you would not want voter ID is so you can get illegal votes.
Yeah.
There's no other explanation for it. So yeah.
Yeah. What would be another explanation, like that American citizen wouldn't have their ID.
Well, that's the Democrats.
How many American
That's what they
citizens
say. It's like,
don't
oh,
have
it's
their ID?
racist. It's, they use the same words. It's racist to make people have voter ID because some people they don't have IDs or they don't, which is complete BS. It's like,
If that was the case, wouldn't it be smarter to do something where, hey, if you don't have an ID, right, you can't afford, I don't know how much it costs to go get a driver's license or some sort of identification card, then you could, for the next, month or previously, the last month, you could go get one for free at a DMV or wherever, That would be my thought on it if that's really the concern.
I mean, I just think you simplify it and say you have to have an ID.
Yeah.
You have to have an ID to fly. You have to have I have to show my ID, at all these different places that require it. Yeah. So you should require one for a vote, especially if you're voting on who's going to run this country.
You think it's wild that for a while there you had to have a vaccination card?
Oh, they had no problem with that. When you went to these, certain cities and...
You couldn't even go to eat in restaurants?
No. Yeah, you had to go eat outside. I got, in New York, we went there for 9/11. They were like, you don't have your vaccine card. Now they let us, eat outside, but at the same time...
you piece of trash.
Yeah, people are inside are just looking out at you like freaking scum,
You're like...
It's like, why don't you just make me wear a Jewish star on my... what I'm saying? This is what this reminds me of.
Mm-hmm.
But then again,
Trump
now
Hitler.
they're like, hey, but we don't want an ID. You don't need an ID to vote.
Yeah.
So it's
really backwards.
It is, dude. It's a clown show, and there's no reasoning. You know what I mean? Oh, well, maybe they're doing it because it's because of this. No, dude, they're doing this because they're cheating or because they're out of their mind. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm optimistic though. I think.
Can you imagine, the idea of, what excites me the most is to be honest, is of course biasly, with Elon, just being a tech entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. What I love about Elon is the richest person in the world gave up all his money in starting new companies. Right? He'd already made it.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do anything. He's
like the modern day Tony Stark,
Yeah, just a nerdy version of him.
He's actually pretty awesome.
Dude, I'm the fact that and you have him, RFK Jr. was Democrat, right? You have him who was Democrat previously. You have, who else? There's
Tulsi Gabbard was a Democrat. They booted her out of the Democratic Party.
I think a modern... what used to be a Democrat in the 80s, 90s, they everyone agreed on some basic, the Constitution, some basic American rights, and they differed on social and capitalism, and they differed on some things that I don't necessarily know the right answers to a lot of those either.
Yeah,
but they were the idea of I have a buddy who I won't mention his name, but he's was really high up politically, was always Democrat, right? He does not like Trump, but he's also what is it with these woke, he's classic Democrat, but he's these woke multiple genders, all this stuff. He's this stuff is stupid.
Yeah.
And
so will he vote for Trump, or is he one of those never Trump? I'll vote for anybody.
I don't know. I don't know. That's tough because he sees how crazy a lot of this stuff is. Mm-hmm. But it's so the identity politics or whatever.
Yeah, it's ingrained.
So ingrained, it's hard for him to even think about, quote unquote Republican, because it's so ingrained in him. I don't know. And he just doesn't like Trump personality-wise. It's not about politics and stuff. It's just he just don't like him personality-wise. That's why I like the fact that Trump has all these different guys on his team, for different areas.
Yeah. And you don't have to like your boss's personality. If he's making the right decisions and he's being like leading the country in a positive way, then get over his personality. Like, just put up with it. It's either that or like, and that's where like your buddy who you're talking about is like, well, I just don't like all this extreme woke stuff, and we're going like, guess what, dude? It's only going to get worse if we keep like. Do you think they're going to stop here? It's another 4 years. It's just going to progressively get worse, and that's where I think people need to make that decision and completely. And I'm saying this, but it's like, get over this two-party system. All right, stop looking at it as Republican, Democrat. Stop looking at it like, oh, I hate Trump and this. I'm like, actually, because we only have two choices. That's it. There's no third choice. And if you're one of those people that's like, oh, I'm just not voting for both, then don't bitch when stuff is going wrong. Or if you're one of those people that doesn't vote at all or doesn't take the time, you don't have the right to complain about anything because you couldn't take the time to go pick. Now,
you got to play.
We have two people. Just look at their policies and look at, what, especially with Kamala and Trump. What has Kamala done the past 4 years? And write that down and be truthful about it. And then write down what Trump did in his 4 years in office and everything that was going on. And then what they're both preaching now, which you can clearly see what direction both are going to go in, And so there is where you need to make your pick. Like, do I want to keep going in this direction, or do we need to get some change and start, fixing the things that are wrong with this country, like especially the border or the inflation.
Yes, inflation.
And,
that's the part that I'm not really political and other stuff. And to be honest, I like to have somewhat peace in my life, so I don't follow it constantly. But economics to me and free market to me, there's some right and wrong answer. There's some good and bad answers, right? And some of it's math, and so I'm like, a lot of other stuff's more opinion and moral and
ethics, and morality,
Which I mean, I have opinions on them, but with economics, I'm like, the fact that Elon Musk could come in and lead some teams. I think he's really good at leading very smart people and empowering them.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's personally himself is not going to go through every budget line and everything. I don't believe. I think he'll put together a smart team that goes through, and for us to begin to get out of debt, 23% of all of our taxpayer money goes to just the interest on our debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you imagine running a household like that? Like if 23% of all the money you make this year, all the millions and millions that you make this year, Eddie,
all the millions goes to like a quarter of it is just paying like your credit card debt or whatever. You'd be like, dude, we got to get out of this credit card debt. We need to cut our credit cards and stop spending money that we don't have.
Bingo. You'd be like, you would sit down with Andrea and you'd be like, dude, let's come up with a plan. Like we gotta
dig ourselves out of this hole.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but if like times that we've had to gone in debt before or just been unsmart in our marriage, we were so broke in the beginning. We were Dave Ramsey in it. We had like envelopes where we put cash in.
Oh yeah, we did the spend envelopes, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we had $20 a month that was our no questions asked deal that I could spend it on whatever.
Yep.
In the beginning.
You had the miscellaneous, one for a car, one for groceries. Yeah, dude.
We did it, and I love the fact that now that those principles we learned then has bled into now, right? So now that we have more money than I thought we'd ever have, right, and make more, we still have that we still have those conservative principles we learned during that time.
But that's also part of the reason why you have more money now. is because you're doing
Yeah.
it smartly, and you say
Yeah.
you have to
We live below
you
our
have to
means.
bootstrap sometimes. And I mean, that's Andrew and I were talking about that the other day. Just, we had the kids are in college, or Trent's in the Marines, Ava's in college, and Ryan's in high school. But we were like, hey, it's pretty awesome, like, to see how our kids are, and like how they don't have this mentality of like, oh, we have all the money in the world, and let's just.
Yeah.
They know, like, hey,
Things cost money.
exactly, but they know that because in the military you don't make a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? So you have to bootstrap, especially living in San Diego, California, with 3 kids. Like and so that's what we did. We had the spend envelopes. We
Coupons,
were on
all that.
a budget, right? Pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
And so coming from that to now, obviously we're making more money than I did in the military now. But at the same, we still have that same mindset to where we're not, oh, let's just, blow money or spend money that we don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your lifestyle, like as you get more, your lifestyle will creep up, right? Like
Yeah.
you'll get nicer things and a nicer house and stuff, but you're so conscious of it that your income's going to be rising faster than your lifestyle because of those principles. Like I feel like we live like kings now, right?
Yeah.
But we don't we save more money every month than I thought we would make in a year, and get to invest it. And so it's like our lifestyle's not going to creep up that fast because we're so used to living below our means.
Yeah. It's wants and needs, man.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you might want that thing, but do you need it?
Yeah.
Like, is that nearly a necessity in your life right now? And if you're spending money on things that aren't a necessity, and just because, like, oh, I want that just to have it,
Yeah.
and you're going in debt for it, that's on you. That's your fault, right?
Yes.
And that's where I'm fine. Like as long as I have enough money or my family does not want for the necessities that you need in life, then I'm successful.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
I don't need the, $1 million whatever, but I mean, it'd be awesome if someone's like, cool, here you go. But I'm like, dude, as long as my family's not wanting for the necessities to help them move forward in life, then we're good.
Yeah.
Anything after that is just
Bonus.
Icing on the cake.
Yeah.
It's like, great. Oh, we have enough money to buy this item or whatever that we all want.
Yeah.
But we will not spend money on it unless we have it.
Yeah. And when you do save and invest and grow more like that, then you can begin to go, okay, here's the pathway of where we can get our time.
Yeah.
Where, and I mean, that's really what I think you guys are doing now is you're growing yourself so that, hey, you have these rich pricks that want to come and shoot themselves on the range or whatever, and they're like, bring in Eddie Geller, and you're like, I don't have to do jobs like that, Instead, I'm going to go take my family on a vacation, or I'm just going to spend time here.
Yeah, like tomorrow I'm taking Andrea and Ryan to Camp Vertex for 2 days, and it's literally just going to be a family weekend.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Steve, who owns it, it's like, open it up. We're going to have, but that's a luxury. That's a luxury where I'm like, we get to go spend time as a family together for a weekend and just sort of unwind and chill, but then knowing I'm coming back Monday and it's back to work, right?
Yeah.
But you need those times to just hey, this weekend is just for us.
Yeah.
We'll go hunt, go mess around, do whatever we want.
What you can't get back is that time with family and
No.
kids and investing in them.
Not at all.
You don't need a lot of money to do that.
You don't. You don't need any,
You
really.
can go to a public park and spend time,
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, brother. I think that's good for today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Appreciate you guys listening. I honestly, I've talked to more and more people that come up and are like, dude, I listen to the podcast, and it's humbling every time. So if you are one of those listeners, Dave and I sincerely appreciate you
Sure.
taking the time and hopefully getting something out of it. So,
Yeah. 100%. Thank
Yep.
you guys.
Yeah, buddy.
All right.
Out.